Dude, I just had this insane conversation at work. I don't understand it at all. This dude who's a buddy of mine, he's a Hispanic guy. He had told me previously that he'd been undocumented in America for like 10 years. He got a citizenship a while back. He's been a citizen for a few years. But he has family that's undocumented in America. And I found out today he voted for Trump. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, he came up from Mexico, so really, I told him I don't understand. And with, having family that's undocumented, he said that Trump was just the better choice, that he's going to fix the economy, and that he's not a criminal like Kamala, that she's a criminal, and that Trump isn't, and that his family would be okay because they're in hiding. So I was like, they're going to go after your family, right? Because they're undocumented. And he's like, oh no, they're okay, they're in hiding. Like, the mental hoops these people will jump through to support Trump is amazing to me. And the fact that his base is like the people he's targeting, or a portion of his base, I should say, I don't understand it at all. It blows my mind.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've had a couple conversations with people like that out here. I think when it comes to immigrants and undocumented immigrants or people with undocumented people in their family that vote for Trump, I think it's just that sort of thing of not really thinking it applies to you. I also think a lot of people have not really processed this whole claim of mass deportations. I think that kind of slipped by a lot of people, and that was one of Kamala's biggest mistakes, is that she wasn't able to focus on the mass deportations, the poisoning the blood of our country rhetoric, because she also chose to run to the right on immigration. And if she hadn't done that, and she chose to try to be a little bit more bold on that issue, to try to come up with some solutions that people haven't said before, rather than this stuff about strengthening our border, etc., then she would have been able to point stuff out like that, like mass deportations, what that means for people's families. People really have not taken themselves through that. And yeah, I have a friend who works in security with me out here who, there's, plenty of immigrants, undocumented immigrants who work in that industry. And especially out here in California, we're right by Tijuana. And he was saying basically the same thing. He was saying, Trump used to be racist, but I think he's made progress. I think he's changed. I don't think he's racist anymore. This was a few months ago. And, at the time, it didn't really even occur to me then to say, this is a guy who wants mass deportations. I don't know if I had, if I was privy to that quite yet, or if Trump was talking about that much at the time. But yeah, when someone says Kamala is a criminal and Trump is not, it's just like, what can you even say to that? There's just nothing to say. Like you said, the mental gymnastics. Look, even if you want to say Kamala is some kind of criminal for some reason, whatever, she's a politician, she's crooked for this reason or that, I haven't even heard any accusations like that thrown out there. There really isn't anything, she's not, as the head of the Democratic Party, she definitely would be liable for a lot of corruption, but I don't really think there's a lot of corruption that you can attach to her specifically at this point in her career. But yeah, the fact that even if you want to make the case that it's Kamala is a criminal because of Democratic Party, blah, 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 it's still just a complete detachment from the reality of Donald Trump is a convicted criminal. And even if you've accepted that reality, it's the mental gymnastics to get through, oh, well, that's fake, that's not legitimate, and they only did that because of this and that and this and that. And we're at a point where a lot of people are really, really, really detached from reality, and that's just all it is. And there's a lot of people that you can't really argue with, because it's just what's coming through people's phones. That's all it comes down to. But the interesting thing is that somehow this podcast seems to be reaching some of those people, I've noticed, specifically on the issue of immigration. I've had people in the comments talking about that sort of thing. And, it's somehow or another, we're reaching some of these people who are completely alien to this idea, to that Trump is clearly the worst option. But, it's just like completely divergent media diets that lead people to certain different conclusions. It's like just a small drip of propaganda that, leads people so far in a certain direction that when they talk to somebody who is on the other side of that propaganda, it's just like they can't even compute with what you're saying. And I'm noticing that a lot with people who are finding this channel, is that it's like they can't even fathom some of the like basic normal things that we're saying, like Trump is a fucking crook. That is like a crazy idea to them. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing that we're both piercing our own echo chamber bubble and also other people's. And I'm really curious about that as to like how we can keep doing that in a way that is organic and healthy and doesn't fall victim to audience capture, but rather can actually like, introduce a different type of conversation and a different type of information to the algorithm of people that are not used to hearing those type of arguments.
I don't know. It's just so wild to me still that the direct people he's affecting the most negatively are some of the ones shouting in support of him the loudest. And then I've had that used as an argument for him to me by people saying stuff like, well, look, you're not an immigrant. You don't have as much say in what affects immigrants or what immigrants should think as an immigrant, obviously. And these immigrants are voting for him, so why don't you shut up? They don't have a problem with him. Why do you? And it's just such an odd place to be in, where part of me is like, okay, yeah, that does make sense, I guess. But like, you're watching these people be brainwashed and fooled and conned. How can you not want to like help them or help people realize like what a piece of shit monster this guy really is? I feel like there has to be one more piece of it. The people backing him, like you said, that there's, they hear this, they think he's, a good guy. They hear that she's a criminal. They think like, oh, well, maybe even the ones that are open to the fact that he used to be racist, they might be like, well, maybe he used to be racist, but now he's gotten better and this and that. They have to want to like him, because those kind of mental gymnastics, it's like maybe when you have a kid that's a real piece of shit and you did your best with them and you raise them and they're in their 20s or 30s at this point and they're obviously not going to change and they're just a real fucking like fedora wearing, piece of shit. Like not even fedora, like treble, like stepping down and one step worse even, those little mini fedoras. And you're just like, I don't know where I went wrong. But rather than accepting that, you're like, oh, my kid's the best. I love him. He's great. I don't know why. To do those kind of mental gymnastics, you have to want to, right? Your brain has to like, I need to like this guy, so I'm going to say, well, he's better now, or well, maybe he's got some rough qualities, but Kamala's worse, to hear one time in a video someone just saying Kamala's a criminal and then latching on, yeah, well, she's a criminal without there being any real accusations, even much less evidence. And I'm sure she has done some shady stuff. She's definitely culpable with the Democrats' corruption at the very least. My problems with her are more the opposite. She's a fucking cop, and I don't like cops. I don't like her record as a prosecutor. I think she's way too right-wing. Maybe she's done a lot of stuff to show that she has some left views in the last few months when she was trying to curry favor with the left at the beginning, but then she pivoted into just trying to swing right voters, which was, as we've talked about many times, not only stupid, but kind of pathetic and sad. I don't know. They're just, as much as I don't like her, she's still clearly, if you just look at it objectively, less of a criminal than Donald fucking Trump. And you can say like, oh, well, his convicted crimes are stuff people think is bullshit. Well, they don't care that he paid her hush money. And to an extent, I get that. Like, that's his personal life. And maybe it doesn't really affect how he runs things. I think it's evidence of what a piece of shit he is. But, like, and be like, well, you know, it was a bit of a media witch hunt after him. But yeah, of course there was, because he's such a piece of shit. They've got to take him down. Like, I don't know. But that kind of defense of this guy who is clearly a criminal, they just don't care. They want to find a way to make it okay. But I thought he was known as a joke and a criminal up until the first election, I guess. I mean, he was always thought of as this business con man who was gaudy and shady and didn't pay his contractors and found loopholes and started shell companies to start construction, and then would hire the contractors through the shell companies and then just declare bankruptcy in the shell company so he didn't have to pay his contractors, just do shitty stuff like that constantly. He was known as a joke. I just watched a YouTube video the other day that was a deconstruction of the early 2000s, mid 2000s TV show Lil Bush. I don't know if you ever saw that. I didn't really see it in its time. I saw clips of it and stuff, and it looked kind of funny, but I was kind of past that kind of humor and making fun of George W. at the time. When it finally actually made it to air, it was like the last year of W's presidency. And it's just a cartoon about him and his cabinet as kids. There's little Condoleezza Rice, little Dick Cheney, little Donald Rumsfeld, living in the White House during George Sr.'s presidency, and they get into little antics as I don't know. It's goofy. I was only halfway paying attention to the video breakdown. But it was talking about how it was, you know, a funny show. It was done the wrong time. It was the first show that started on a cell phone. It was on these weird amped cell phones back in the day as little shorts when video on a phone was first becoming possible. Then it went to YouTube. Then Comedy Central bought it. But by the time it went to air, it was only the last year of Bush's presidency. The reason I bring it up is there's a scene in that show. And the show was popular. It did well for what it was. But there's a scene where little Jeb Bush is being deprogrammed and reprogrammed a la A Clockwork Orange. He's like strapped in the machine with his eyes being held open by hooks and forced to watch this video montage of all the dumbest things in America. And it's like Carrot Top and giant SUVs, and it's just flashing all these images of dumb stuff like people fighting at a Black Friday sale and stuff like that. But it keeps flashing Donald Trump's face like several times. It's the only one that keeps repeating is Donald Trump's face. Like, and that was during Bush's last term, going into Obama's first term, long before he was a presidential candidate, or at least a serious one. I mean, I think he'd run for president or talked about it a couple times by that point already, but like, we knew this guy was a joke. How did he pivot into what he is?
And when it comes to people who like Trump, no matter how bad he is, no matter what, all the excuses that get made for him, like you mentioned, how the whole porn star thing is, it's kind of petty when you just look at it from the perspective of he was just paying off a porn star, but really it's the overall picture that matters, right? It's like, it's corruption. It's, you know, he wanted to silence this story. He was fucking this girl while he was married anyway. He wanted to silence the story, so he, you know, ran this hush money through all these weird channels in his company. He lied about it. He falsified documents. Like, all of these things are straightforward crimes. It's not really a matter of, and that's not even to mention the fact that there's election crimes involved as well. And that's part of why he was implicated in this in the first place. If this was just something about his personal life, nobody would care. But, you know, it's really just about the bigger picture of this guy's corruption and the way he behaves, and the fact that if he does that on such a small scale for such a small petty thing, that ultimately the Stormy Daniels story, who even gives a fuck about that? Like, that compared to all the stuff we know about him now, that's like nothing. He probably never even had to pay her. He's probably kicking himself about that. He's like, I should have just never paid that dumb bitch and just never said anything about it. Not to call Stormy Daniels a dumb bitch. I think she's a wonderful lady. But the thing that I think works for Trump, man, is I think whether it's immigrants or women, you know, suburban women or whoever it is, I think people just like somebody who just yaps 24/7. I think Donald Trump's
I think his number one skill, the thing that he does that works, that is the reason he's able to wiggle through all these situations, whether it's Mueller investigating him over Russia, or the Stormy Daniels stuff, or the recent stuff with Jack Smith, or, you know, the stuff in Georgia, or anything. It's just that he just never stops fucking yapping, bro. He just never shuts up. And so he's always able to whittle away at the credibility of, I remember very vividly watching him do this with the Mueller report, where it's like, the reason the whole Russia case fell apart is not because there was no evidence that Trump's campaign was in touch with Russia. It's not because there was nothing there. There was a lot there. There was indictments there, and there was like evidence of I think 200 undisclosed contacts between Trump's campaign and Russian subsidiaries. That's fucking sketchy, man. That is exactly as sketchy as the entire news media operation was making it out to be. It's weird. Why are all these different people in his campaign having these contacts with Russia? Some of them are telling them things like, oh, don't worry, we'll take care of these sanctions. Just let us get into office first. You know, you got, what's that fucking dickhead's name? The first guy that went down. I can't even remember his name, but he was running the campaign at the first time at the time, and he was one of the ones to get indicted, and he was moving all this money around in all these weird ways, and you know, he got actually charged with crimes, and you know, the reason Robert Mueller decided not to charge him with obstruction or even to dig further into these crimes, there was never really any evidence of like espionage or you know, some kind of like more grand crime like treason or something. Admittedly, Robert Mueller was not able to find evidence of that, but he definitely found a lot of evidence that Trump had obstructed justice, and he could have charged him for that, except for the fact that, you know, I guess the Department of Justice as a whole made a call that they're not going to charge the president. And so you know, Robert Mueller made that clear when he made his report. He was like, there's evidence of crimes here. I do believe that Donald Trump committed obstruction of justice, but it's up to Congress to do something about that. It's not up to me. But because Donald Trump had so steadily whittled away and just went on Fox News every day, and he had his cronies on Fox News every day, whittling away at the credibility of Robert Mueller, whittling away at the credibility of the whole case, and making it out to be a witch hunt, and making it out to be an unfair, you know, use of the powers of the Department of Justice or whatever, every day, you know, eventually that the case lost credibility. So when Robert Mueller decided not to actually make charges or do anything that would have made a bold impact, it made it so that a guy like Barr could step in and just kind of tamp down the whole thing and just be like, well, they didn't find any evidence of collusion, and so this, you know, Donald Trump is exonerated. And that was pretty much the end of it, even though that was what Robert Mueller, that was not what he said. And at the time he said that wasn't what he said, but it didn't matter because Donald Trump going on TV and yapping every day about how corrupt the whole investigation worked. And I think in all of these cases, all of these things that should be points against Donald Trump with certain people, the reason it's not is because he's able to reach them by just fucking yapping. He just never, ever, ever stops yapping, and it works.
Also, too, real quick, it's worth noting that just because there are a significant amount of immigrants who broke for Trump does not mean that like the majority of immigrants in America support Trump. That I've not seen any data on that. I think that's far from true. And also, most of the immigrants who are going to be the most affected by this, either people who are undocumented or who have had trouble getting themselves documented and are like somewhere in the gray area of the system. Those people don't have a voice, regardless of what the Republicans and Elon Musk's dumbass wants to scream about. Like those people are not voting. They can't vote. They have no say in any of this. And so continuing to speak out against Donald Trump and point out how bad he is for all immigrant populations, not just undocumented immigrant populations, like we are still speaking for all those people who can't speak for themselves. And so we shouldn't back off of that just because of this idea, well, if immigrants like Trump, then why the fuck are you? No, fuck that. I don't give a fuck who likes Trump because I know what I know about him, and I'm not gonna let the fucking like zeitgeist beat me down about it and like gaslight me. Fuck that.
Oh, and for the record, no, I do not think the majority of immigrants support Trump. To me, it's a surprising number. I don't know the actual numbers on it. But I know that in certain areas, the majority voted for Trump and stuff like that, is what I've heard. But just the fact that any support him, I find surprising. But just the fact that it's a percentage that's significant kind of blows my mind. I saw a video of RFK talking about how he's not going to take away vaccines. That if vaccines are working for you, you should be able to have access to them. He just wants you to have an informed choice, and there to be good science there, to have the proper research done, and everyone to be able to make their choices right for them. Which does sound good on the surface. My problem is, what does good science mean to him, and what does having that choice mean to him? And I don't know if it works anything like what he did in Samoa with the propaganda campaigns against it, and the informed decision being heavily informed by bullshit propaganda. I don't really consider that, good, or having good science to make an informed choice, honestly. I don't really think that is that at that point, but we'll see what happens. I mean, in the words of Donald Trump, a direct quote from him, Robert F. Kennedy is the dumbest Kennedy, so there's that.
Well, and the thing with the vaccines, unfortunately, is that, while it sounds great, this whole idea of yeah, listen, if it's just not for you, then you shouldn't have to take them. Your child shouldn't have to take them. You shouldn't have to be giving your child something that you don't understand or that you're uncomfortable with. And so we just want people to have more of that choice. The problem is that just kind of defeats the whole purpose, because if you have more people who aren't taking the vaccine, whose kids aren't taking the vaccine, those people are going to be vulnerable, and not only are they at risk, but they're going to spread it to other people. The whole reason we've eradicated measles is because of the compulsory nature of the measles vaccine. And that's just what it is. And so taking that away, while I can understand the quote small government argument for chipping away at that compulsory, those compulsory vaccine programs, which is specifically what RFK wants to do, I get it logically, but the problem is that logic completely fails to understand the logic of what a vaccine is and why it works. And so it's okay, if we want to take the small government pro-choice, for example, approach to vaccines, that's great, but we are going to go backwards as a society. There's no two ways about it. You can't, and it's not that vaccines have to be 100% compulsory down the line. Everybody must take them, because I can get why that would freak people out, and that's not the case right now. But when it comes to schools, when it comes to hospitals, when it comes to public places, the fact that having vaccines specifically with your kids in public school is compulsory, that protects our society as a whole. And without that, we're kind of fucked. People are going to get more sick, and measles is going to be able to get a foothold in our culture. And this is exactly where we're at with COVID as well, where it's the average person isn't seeing it, because to us it's just oh well, COVID, it came and went, I got sick once or twice, who cares, blah blah blah, it's over. But actually COVID has been able to get a foothold. We could have totally eradicated COVID, and that's what fucking frustrates me about all this. We 100% had the ability to eradicate COVID if we had a better president in office at the time, leading into the Biden administration, where he actually did a good job rolling out those vaccines. Then we would have had, as a culture, a much better approach to those vaccines, and we could have, as a unit, eradicated, or pretty much eradicated, COVID. But instead, enough people didn't want to take the vaccine or wanted to disobey the various rules. And so now COVID is just a permanent part of our society. And a lot of people would shrug their shoulders at that and be like, well, who cares? It doesn't matter. I had it. I feel fine. If people are still getting it, they're not still dying or whatever. People forgot how bad it was when people were dying in large numbers. But the truth is, this is a disease that is perpetually damaging and affecting all of our immune systems. People wonder why young people are dying of heart disease or, getting heart disease earlier, and different types of ailments are affecting people at younger ages and stuff. And it's because that's what COVID does. It weakens your immune system. It weakens your nervous system so that you're vulnerable to all kinds of ailments, or just generally certain parts of your body not working well. And so we are marching as a society into a world where all of us are perpetually more vulnerable to that. And because there are people who don't want to take vaccines and who don't want to take it seriously and refuse to take it seriously, all of us are just going to be vulnerable to that disease pretty much forever. And you apply the same logic to measles or polio, and all of a sudden things look really fucking dark. And like, that was the progress that we made with vaccines. And that's the issue with a guy like RFK, and what he wants to do with these programs is that, like, the whole individual choice thing, it doesn't work when it comes to vaccines. We have to move collectively as a society for the greater good of us all. Otherwise it won't work. And the fact that people like Trump and RFK Jr. and Robert Mercer and Steve Bannon have chipped away at our cultural understanding of public health, we are all much worse off in the long run for that. And it's just that simple.
Yeah, you're absolutely right with vaccines. It kind of defeats the entire purpose. So we are screwed. I mean, I've been saying for a while now, he's one of my biggest fears about the Trump campaign. I mean, there's a lot of huge things. He's, no more dangerous than a lot of things Trump's going to do, or people Trump's going to appoint, I'm sure. But he's someone, I know his brand of crazy. I know too much about the man. And I'm really scared to have someone like him in that position. One thing I could say that could come of it is this term, I think, is going to put a lot of evidence that a lot of these MAGA people's claims about what Trump will do for the economy, what he'll do for the price of eggs or whatever it is they're excited about, and people's personal freedoms, and how these deportation things are going to be good and tariffs are going to be good. It's going to really blow up in their face. And I think we will see more of a immediate impact than you would, not immediate, but faster impact than you normally do. That we talk a lot about that bleed, that a lot of a president's impact takes, almost 4 years to really start to take effect, because things move so slowly. So you're seeing it in the next term, and people somehow never seem to grasp that on a big scale. But I think some of these things are going to be so shocking, and because it's Trump's second term, and he's not only does he not really have to worry about a re-election, people always go a little crazier in their second term, but he's going to, he's so emboldened by getting away with everything he's gotten away with, and winning in a quote-unquote landslide that wasn't really a landslide. It was way more than it should have been, but it's not the landslide they claim it is. So it's just going to be a huge
especially
mess.
If these tariffs go through, man. He's doubling, tripling down on this tariffs idea, and everybody is just screaming that this is going to destroy the economy. And at this point, I kind of want him to put it through. Just yeah, okay, bro, come on in, fix the economy, do what you're gonna do, fix it. Let's see how this goes. Only downside to that, and the fact that it inevitably will blow up in people's faces, like you said, is that their ability to recognize that Trump is responsible for what they're seeing, they just might not have the capacity for that. We've seen that in the past when it comes to COVID, that it's just any reason, any narrative that you can attach to that removes Trump from culpability, they go for it every time. So, is Trump's, certainly the tariffs and other things like mass deportation, is that going to handily ruin the economy and probably cause all kinds of other chaos? Yeah, totally. Is Trump going to lose any support for it? I don't know.
No, I don't think he will. I think the Democrats will get blamed somehow. Anything bad that comes out of the mass deportations, it'll just be because he was given an impossible problem, because these Democrats let the border just open and everyone run free for 4 years. So he was handed this impossible situation, and now he's trying to clean up this mess and doing the best he can I mean, the man took a bullet for the country. Show some respect.
It really kind of goes back to the whole South Park joke of giant douche versus turd sandwich, because it's like, and that's what's fascinating to me about sort of the bipartisan nature of American politics, meaning the fact that there's two sides and everything more or less falls under one of those two sides. And it's interesting because it's like you put up one option, turd sandwich, the other option, giant douche, and it's like not only do people have to choose between those and one of them's gonna win, which is the scary part, but also like you have those guys up there for long enough parading them around, and it's like they're gonna gain support. And so, you're gonna have giant douche fans out there and turd sandwich supporters out there. And whatever it is about Trump, there is something about Trump that is just perpetually convincing, perpetually persuasive. And I don't know if it's just the basics of his sort of like TV con man lawyer, shiesty lawyer kind of thing, Better Call Saul type, like gestures and stuff. But something about what he does, something about this persona that he has built ever since The Apprentice, it just works. People buy it over and over, so that even if he loses support in certain places, some people become annoyed with him or whatever. It's like there's always going to be more marks out there. There's always another mark. I guess that's really what the Trump theory of politics is that like no matter what, you just move on to the next mark, because there's always going to be another mark out there that you can get a vote out of.
No, man, when you got to vote for the lesser of two evils, you don't want a criminal politician. You want a criminal politician.